What is going on, everyone? This is Damon for CCID and today we are going to get into the second part of the tutorial that I put up a week ago, where I went through the process of showing you guys how to model this, or similarly the techniques and tricks that I use to model all kinds of stuff like this. But this is whereabouts we got, and I feel remiss because I left a little bit out. There was extra parts to that I didn't think of at the time. I was kind of just glad I got through what I got through, because doing this stuff, recording this stuff isn't always easy, and it's hard not to make mistakes when you do it. At least for me. Some of the guys are pros. But yeah, so there was other elements I want to go over real quick, just to kind of give you an idea of also how much further you can take this. So you've got your basic shape here. I'm going to undock this and get rid of this, because we'll move on to the texturing part real soon. So you've got it, and you can basically keep adding on to this by just grabbing extra parts. So for instance, we're going to grab this polygon right here. We're going to hit U, P, or if you right click, you go down to split. And what that did is that created a whole, it created just that shape. So now if we were to solo that, we've just got that shape, which is really cool. Sort of. You're like, where's he going with this? So what we're going to do is we're going to extrude that guy. We're going to click on create caps, extrude them out a little bit. And we're going to hit I. Well, actually, what we're going to do is I want to bevel this corner here. So we're going to hit, remember, MS, or right click and go to bevel. And we're just going to bevel this guy a little bit, about 5, just to get cooler shape. Actually, we're gonna bevel this guy too. Alright, I'm liking that a little better. And then click back on polygon, and we're actually going to go on this side of it, because you'll see in a second when we actually go back into the whole shape. So I'm going to hit I for inner extrude a little bit, hit D, but make sure you uncheck create caps, because that'll mess up your geometry when you're trying to bevel later. Extrude out a little bit. Actually, we're going to go back a couple steps, because what I want to do is I actually want to grab both of them. I want to grab that one and this one, just for symmetry's sake. So again, UP or split. Get rid of the bevel on that. Grab these, solo them. Again, this is Magic Solo. It's a free plugin from Nitro 4D, I believe. Let's find that real quick for you. Magic Solo plugin. Yep, Nitro 4D. So he has you got the Magic Solo. He's got a bunch of free stuff in here. I mainly use Magic Solo and Magic Merge, which I can show you also. So yeah, so we're gonna grab these guys. Again, we're going to hit D for extrude, create caps, extrude out a little bit. And then we're going to grab these couple of edges. MS for bevel, hit new transform. And then we're going to click back in polygon mode, grab these faces, hit I for extrude inner, extrude in, D, uncheck create caps, please don't forget that, and extrude out a little bit. Alright, and then what we can do is we can grab this one, this guy, extrude inner a little bit, out a little bit, and remember MB, or right click and go to bridge, and just bridge these guys. And that makes them into the single object. And then you can go through and pretty much do, whatever you want to it. Like for instance, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in. I'm going to grab this, go into our side view, and I'm going to hit I for extrude inner, extrude it down to about where the other one is, and then I'm going to go back, grab these, back in, and extrude them down a little bit more, just a little bit. And then we're going to hit MB for bridge, and we're going to click here and click here. And now we have a pretty cool looking element. We can do the same thing on the insides of these guys, or we can leave them. I think we can leave them. I think it'll be fine. And then if we wanted to, we could also extrude out this like the other one was, but we don't need to do that. That's not a big deal. Alright, so now we've got this extra little shape created. We will unsolo it, and now we can see it. What we're going to do is we're going to select both of these and hit Alt-G and put them in a null. So that way, now you've got the new element, which we will center, axis center, and we will drag out a little bit, drag up a little bit, drag out a little bit more. Actually, let's make sure we do this in increments. So we're going to go, say like 60, then like 60. And then if we don't really want to have stuff intersecting too much, what we can do is we can drag it down to about there, and then we're going to solo this guy again. We're going to go into sides, we're going to go into our point mode, grab our rectangle selection, grab these top ones, go back in, unsolo it, and just drag them up. And now we've got a whole new element. Of course, it looks like it's not completely even. So let's grab this guy and maybe drag him in a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect, honestly. Again, it's totally up to you. But that's pretty close. So basically what I was trying to show you is just you can grab any face off of this, split it, and create a whole new element to add into the render, which is really, really cool. And what I'm kind of focusing on is essentially we started this from a single polygon, and then we can keep using that exact shape to make more objects to add on to our object. So yeah, so that's a really cool one. Let me see about another one real quick. I think there was one I was working on that I thought was pretty cool. Look for the right shape here. I think it might be this guy. So we'll grab the shape and we'll grab this, and this. Or maybe it was one of the smaller ones. No, I think it was that. So we're going to grab this, and this, and this. And again, we're going to hit U and then P, or right click and split. So now we've got this again. We're going to get rid of this bevel. And we are going to solo these guys, center our axis, go into polygon, select A, hit D for extrude, create caps, and extrude out a little bit. I like even numbers, so we'll go to 5. And then what we're going to do is select this guy and this guy, extrude inner a little bit, hit D, make sure you uncheck create caps, and extrude out. Let's see, 25. MB for bridge, and bridge this guy. Then we're going to do the same thing up here. We're going to hit these, we're going to hit extrude inner a little bit, and then we're going to hit D. We're going to extrude these guys out a little bit, not as much as the other ones. So we'll just go to 7, MB, bridge these guys, and then while we have this selected, we're going to hit KL for the loop cut, put it right in the middle. That would not be the middle. Hit the plus button to add an extra line. We can scale these in, but I'm going to leave them right where they're at. So we're going to go to the line mode, and I'm going to hit UB for loop selection, grab these guys, hit MS for bevel, and we're just going to bevel them a little bit, just to get a neat little, cut in our shape, like I showed you before. All right, and then something else we can do to add a little more detail to this is we're going to go to our polygon selection, grab these polygons, deselect that polygon, grab that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, and we're going to hit extrude inner, Oh, and this is something I was trying to do this on the last time, and I couldn't figure out what my problem was. Why, even though well, preserve groups is on, it's working this time. But the reason it wasn't working last time and it was separating is because my maximum angle was at 89. If you put it up to like above 90, say 91, you won't have that problem where the geometry splits apart. And my buddy Andreas or Observadol actually pointed that out to me when he watched the last tutorial. So yeah, so if you're ever trying to extrude inner, even if you have preserved groups checked and it's still splitting apart, try going above 90 and say like 91 and see if that'll actually fix your issue. So now we're going to do MB for bridge. Click here, click here. We got that, and then we're going to do the same thing down here on these guys. So we're going to select the polygons, hit extrude inner, extrude in a little bit, go to the top, hit MB for bridge, and get rid of that. And there we go. Now we got another element. We can do a little bit of detailing on this if we want. We can like grab these corners, these edges, MS for bevel, bevel them in a little bit. And then, let's see, maybe grab these, extrude inner again a little bit, just drag it down. And then maybe extrude inner again, just a tiny bit, and then remember, hold control, and then drag down a little bit. And we will unsolo this guy. Unsolo this. Grab our new piece. And then, let's see. Let's zoom out here a little bit. I think, yeah, we can go in 20, in 20. You can scale it down a little bit. And then I think we can drag it up. And see, it doesn't really matter if it's intersecting because it looks like, it's a piece of machinery. So it kind of can sit there. I mean, if you want it to be resting right on top, that's fine. You could even go in and extrude down that bottom part there if you want to. But it's not really necessary. I mean, this is abstract. It's not supposed to be exact science here. So yeah, so now just with a couple of split faces, we created all new geometry to add into. And you could just keep going and going. But for the sake of timing, I'm going to move on and get to the texturing and lighting and setting up the camera for this. So you have obviously limitless options for your camera angle. I mean, you can go straight on. We can get our camera, move down 90, move it up, turn it on. And that's pretty cool looking. You could grab this whole thing, like I showed you before, right click, go to current state to object, and scale the whole thing up. Move it back a little bit, scale it up a little bit more. And that's a really cool just look just on its own, if you want a straightforward kind of object. I'm going to make a copy of this camera, and then I'm going to kind of zoom in. I'm also going to change the focal length of the camera. I usually like 20 or 15 because you get the, kind of like these extreme angles for it. So we have the choice of this or this. I'm not going to go nuts on making the cloners of it, just for the sake of your video cards and time from when we start actually opening up the live viewer, which we can actually do now. So let me go ahead and grab the live viewer window. I'm going to dock it over here on the side, and we're going to start up a render. And there you go. You've got a basic idea of kind of the framing, how it's going to look. You want to figure out what your focal point is, because if you're going to use any depth of field, obviously I would figure it would be like the center point. You also want to kind of maximize, how much of this thing you're actually seeing. So if we were to go in here, I'm going to do all my camera settings here in the tag. I generally like to go to linear just to start. These are all just my settings. These are not like you have to do it, settings kind of thing. It's really bright right now because we don't have an environment. So let's grab an environment, drop it in there. For now, I will grab an HDRI. I'm just going to grab a basic HDRI. These are free ones that I've had for years. I'm sure you have your own. And again, it's going to depend on, the look you want to get for it. So I'm going to grab kind of a cooler one, but I want it a little blurred out. I don't really want it. Yeah, we'll just grab this one. That one should be fine for now. And we're actually going to let's see, let's try and light this a little. I think what we're actually going to do is we're going to shut this off first. Shut this off, and then we're going to, maybe we'll go with a targeted area light. I have a different setup on this one. So if you go to objects, and go to lights, and go to octane targeted area light, make sure you have your main object selected, and now you've got a light in there. So we're going to get this. Let's see, visibility, camera visibility, and then it's way too bright. So we're going to go down to 10 just for now. I like to use round lights, and we're going to scale that down considerably. And then we're going to go out of camera, and see that's why it's so bright, because it's way too close. So if you take it way out, then we can maybe bring this up a little bit. Now the textures are going to actually affect how this looks and how it's lit a lot, because you're not getting, right now you're not getting any kind of specular, you're not getting any highlights, and I do actually have to go back in, like for instance, right now the bevel's not on the main object. That changed a little bit, but again, you're not going to notice until we really get this thing fully lit and fully textured. All right, now that we got those new bits modeled, I want to do a couple small things to help us. If you notice in the middle here, there's this geometry. And the problem is for setting this up for the animation, which, let me show you real quick, what we're attempting to do by the end of this is get to here. And if you notice, there's holes where the camera can go through, so it's not blocking everything. So we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of quick modeling. So we're going to shut all this stuff off, and we're going to cut out that little section there. So if we shut off our bevel, grab our polygon, grab all these little parts in the area we want to cut. Make sure you got it all. Alright. Gonna hide these cameras from view so they don't get in the way. Go to top. Scroll in here. Go to knife. Hit KK. And start here. Go about here. 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 And then grab our selection tool. Make sure to select visible elements. And grab all these parts that we just cut. Hit delete, go to our point mode, right click, go to optimize, and get rid of those excess points because those will be a pain in the butt later. And then go back in line mode, select everything, and again use my favorite tool, MB, or right click and go to bridge. Start grabbing these edges and bridging them over. And then we're going to clean up some of the geometry again. So if we go to line mode and get our selection tool, click on our selection. So we're going to add these in. And then get rid of some unnecessary ones. Then hit V, select, and set selection. Turn on our bevel. And now we got those guys beveled the way we want. And then if we turn on our geometry or our symmetry objects, you can now see that we have a nice hole to go through with the camera. Let's just double check and make sure we got everything the way we want it. I think in order to add a little more dynamic to the scene, a little more openings so you can see stuff, we're going to do a couple more little things. Go to polygon mode. You're going to grab this guy, this guy. Actually, go to line mode first. Clean up this geometry real quick. Remember, it's MN or right click and dissolve. Then go back into polygon mode. Select this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. Hit I for extrude inner a little bit. Go into top, move, top view. Hit MB for bridge and click in the selected areas. There we go. And then I think I want to add a little more geometry out here as well. So go to line mode, UL for loop selection. Unselect that. Or not, it might actually not be necessary. Actually, I do want to bevel these guys. Notice that from before. Kind of annoyed me. So we're going to go to MS, bevel it up about 5. Should be good. Go through and look again. And again, select these. Hit UL. UB to select on the inside of them. This isn't really necessary. It's just nice to get in the habit of having, bevels on stuff. It just looks nicer. But the way this is going to be flying past the camera, you're not really going to notice. Again, it's more of a personal thing, what you want for your design and how you want it to look. I would say in this case, there's no real wrong way to it. All right, and again, hit V, select, set selection, trying to bevel, and we got those bevels in there. It looks nice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a little bit of geometry to create our lights, because we're only actually going to have 2 lights in the scene. The rest of it's going to be lit by emissive textures on the object itself. So if we go back in, go to polygon mode, UL, and grab that, those, these, and this. Then hit I and extrude inner a bit. Oops. You're going to notice that it's breaking because it's not past 90 degrees. Angle. So extrude inner again. Hit D. Extrude out a little bit. And then we're going to create a texture. Select black body emission. Go in here. Surface brightness. And then just right click and go apply. And now we've got some lights. And what's cool is once we clone this a bunch of times to set up the animation, it'll pretty much light the scene for us. You're going to have a lot of it. We're going to grab this one. Since that was already selected from when we model it, we'll just hit apply on that. And then for this guy, again, that was already selected from when we model it, so we can go ahead and just hit I for extrude inner. Extrude inner a little bit. Hit D. Go in just a tiny bit so it doesn't cut through, and hit apply. And then again, turn everything on. And now, if we shut off the light and we don't have anything lighting it besides the lights that are part of our geometry now. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to create the actual base texture for the entire project. And if you remember, this job basically was referenced by this design that I did back in 2016, where I followed Chad Ashley's dirt dirt tutorial where he uses a dirt node to create fall off in the or create worn edges from metallic materials. So at the time, I had used a mixed material, and let's go ahead and run that real quick. At the time, Octane didn't have blend materials, and that's what I'm going to show you is through the updates over the years. I'm using Octane 4 now. They have the blend material. Or the mixed material, as you see, you could throw a couple different materials in there. You can grab any material, so you have some in your live DB, and you can grab it and you can create a mixed material to get this desired result. The only limitations is a mixed material only lets you use 2 materials. So in order to create a more complex material, you would essentially have to, let's go ahead and copy these real quick while I'm talking about it. You would have to create multiple mixed materials and copy them over and over again, and you would just have an insane amount of materials in your scene. So let's go ahead and get that going. And what you would get is essentially, let's go ahead and drop these on all of them. It's going to kill our lights because what we have to do is we have to actually drag our textures before our texture selections. Make sure they're all cubic. Hit render again. And we'll actually turn up our HDRI for a second. And depending on, you know, where it is, you can see the worn edges here. Like if you go in, we got this set to 2. It's showing up more on there. But basically, let's go ahead and also add in our bump texture that was in there before. Get the idea of it. And a lot of where this is going to show up is going to depend on your gradient here. But you can sort of see it in there a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to recreate this with a blend material. You got to, based on your geometry, you have to adjust the settings. So we're going to go ahead and actually delete all 3 of these guys. And I'm going to come over here. I have these presets set up, but basically what you do is you go to materials and you would go to Octane blend material. And then we'll go ahead and apply these to all of our materials or all of our objects. Make sure they're all set to cubic so we don't forget. And we're going to go into our node editor to edit it. Make this a little bigger. And how the blend material works is it's not like with the mixed material where you can just drag and drop a couple materials into slots and it'll mix them. You actually have to create the materials and then blend them with this Octane blend node. You can use a ton of different materials. You can create a ton. For this purpose, we're only going to be doing 2. And then we're going to create a matte, drag this up, drag this down. Also, what I noticed through experimenting with this is the difference between a mixed material and blend material is in the mixed material, the base black paint that was scratched away would have been in the first slot, and then the metallic worn edges that shows up underneath would have been the second slot. It appears in the blend material, it actually is opposite. So what we're going to set up first is our metallic edges. So to create a metallic, you want to go diffuse, black, add some roughness. And then in the index, we're just going to crank that up, go like 7. And now we have a nice metallic. Let's go ahead and turn this up a bit. All right, we have a nice metallic texture. And then you're not going to be able to see anything, but we're going to set this one up. We're going to do black, do some roughness. So basically how we're going to set this up, it's going to work the exact same way as the the tutorial I referenced that Chad did on Grayscale Gorilla. So the first thing that we do here is we grab a gradient node and we pipe this guy in there. And now you start seeing it darkened a bit because now you're mixing from black and white in the silver and the black. So go ahead and we'll set that up how it was in the mix texture. Set this to about 50 and grab another white one. You're not really going to see a lot of it yet until we get the next part done, which is going to be the multiply node. So we're going to drop texture. The multiply is what's going to help us mix our dirt node and our noise node. See, now you can start seeing we're getting a little bit of it here. So we go into the noise and we're going to set this up. We're going to go with 10 octaves, about 0.8 omega, let's see, 0.105 gamma, and then 2. Now we're getting a little more precise damage look going on to it. It's not so blurry. We're going to add a projection and we're going to change it to box projection, and then we're just going to scale this down a bit. And now we're getting a lot more dirt. And again, this is going to be controlled also by the gradient where we place this. Like we move this down, we're going to probably get less, a little less, yeah. It's not so much of it. But then the dirt node, what we can do is, very important part, something that I missed when I was experimenting with this, is you have to click on the invert normal, and now you start getting it. Now you can go 2, now you're getting a lot more of the worn edges. 1.5. And then if we go back into the noise, you can add more. Go 4. No, it's really for personal taste. I'm going to leave mine at 2. Maybe let's spin this around. There we go. Now we can get a little better light there. Now you can really see it. So now I think we need to add a little bit of bumpiness to it to get more of the effect. So in here, I'm going to add an image texture and pipe that into the bump channel. And then I think we're going to go with, let's check out this damage. Yeah, it looks okay, but we're going to invert it, and we're going to drop it down to like 0.15. Because if you get worn edges, you kind of want to have some damage on it to make it look, you know, why is it going to be worn? So it should have some chips and dents and whatnot in it. And then we're going to do the same thing for our base material. So we're going to grab an image texture. Actually, no, first, I'm sorry. We need to grab a mix node because we're going to mix 2. Grab that there. Control click to copy, or control drag to copy. We're going to pipe that in there. Pipe that in there. And then the first one, we have a couple options. Now this is a techie scene, so you could grab something like a custom greeble, and that looks actually really, really cool. You know, we can turn it down a bit so it's not so harsh. And then for the second one, we could grab, like, let's see this heat treatment. Turn that down to about 0.5. And now we're getting some wear and tear. I think we might actually... No, I think we'll stick with this, because this might help with some of the highlights for the lighting later that we set up. So I think this looks pretty good. Let's see, we can go ahead and turn this off. And now you can see how the whole thing's going to be lit. That gives you an idea right there with using the lighting just from the object of how this thing's going to be lit. And once we clone this a bunch of times, it's going to, you know, I can show you basically now that we've gotten this far, I can show you where we're headed with this. So once you clone it, you get a lot of more lighting. And these accent and pick up a lot of the highlights, and say you're using the greeble texture, you're going to have a lot of little extra highlights from the lighting depending on where you position it. So what we're going to set up now is the animation, and this is kind of what the plan is for it to look like. So let's hop back over there and set this up. We're going to go into the side view, and I'm going to grab the pen tool, and I am going to draw a spline. Something that's going to help as well is a coordinate manager, because we need to be able to zero out these points so that it's actually it's straight. Otherwise, when we set up the camera, when we look at the camera and we clone it, you're not going to be able to tell what's going on. So if we grab the spline, you can see that they are not zeroed. And we're going to make the spline about 2400. So now, if we click on our symmetry object and we hold down Alt, click on MoGraph and go to Cloner, we are going to set this to an object, and we are going to put the spline in there. In a second. And then once we go here, you can see that we need to go into the cloner. We need to change this to 90. And then you can still see that the spline isn't completely lined up. It's still not straight. So there you go. Then Z. Now if we hit render, you get a general idea of where we're going with this and how it's going to look. And you can, once it kicks in a little bit, you can see the highlights on the greeble texture. So let's make a couple other adjustments here. I think with the camera, I think that focal distance is way too high. I think we're going to go with a wider angle lens. And I think we need to move the position a bit. And there you go. This gives you a lot more of an idea of what your final output's going to look like. Now, the reason I decided to clone on a spline is for this. What's really cool is when you clone in an object, you get an offset value. Sure, you also check render instances. So we can offset this and make this move, the clones move, instead of the camera. That way we don't have to worry about animating the camera. It can stay right where it is, and we can animate around it. Now we want these to come towards the camera, so what we're going to do is we're going to add some more frames. So we're going to go with 600, which will give us, at 30 frames per second, it's going to give us about 20 seconds of animation. Which is good, because I've uploaded videos to Instagram, for instance, and it's like, oh, it needs to be a minimum of like 10, 15 seconds. So 20 seconds is good. And also, I think if you go kind of like with just 10 seconds, it moves a little too fast with this method. So we're going to go to our first frame. We're going to click keyframe, go to our final frame, and we're going to go negative value of minus 100%. So we go back to the beginning, and we start it. Now you get an idea of what's happening and how this animation is working. What we're also going to do now is we're going to click on a cloner, and we're going to go to MoGraph, Effector, and we're going to go to Plane Effector. Plane Effector needs to be about minus 300. It needs to be changed 90 degrees. And the effector and the parameter, we're going to go not position, but scale. We're going to go uniform scale and a scale of -1. And then in the fall off, we're going to go linear. And the reason we did this, and you can make adjustments to this depending on your taste, is if you notice in the background now, you're seeing a secondary animation happen, which is going to be really cool once this thing's actually moving. So if we actually play it back, you can see that animation now. We can even like hide it so it doesn't show up. Now you're getting a secondary animation, which is cool. So the next step we're going to do now is we're going to take our cloner and our spline, and we're going to control, drag, and make copies. Make sure you click on your cloner, replace the spline, because we're going to make adjustments to the spline. Basically what we're going to do with this spline is we're going to move it 45 degrees, and we're going to flip it 180 degrees. So now we got an even more complex organic animation, which is really cool. Because once you really get and find a good scene, a good shot, render, you can see it's getting more complex. And I think we're going to set up our render settings at the moment as well. So I like to use camera imager in the camera tag. We're going to go with a linear profile. About 0.5. Brighten that back up. You can go, brighter if you want. You always want to kind of stick with the 2.2 depending on if you're using EXRs. But this will work for now. Do some highlight compression. White point down to black. Add some vignetting. Go down to, I always go to 0.5 on my hot pixel removal. It's just standard settings I do. In the actual Octane settings, we are definitely not going to render at that. Go down to 500. Maybe drop these down to 5. They don't need to be that insane for this purpose. So adaptive sampling on. Alright. So now the next step is going to be grabbing the original cloner, the original spline, and copying them again. Again, go in here, place the spline. And for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to grab this null that has all of our main base shapes in, and we're going to shrink it. And then I think what we're going to do is we're going to grab this spline and we're going to shift it by like 100. So now if we look at the animation, you got some pretty crazy stuff going on in here. One thing I also want to make sure I go over real quick, because I've done this a lot, is when you're working on heavy scenes like this, a lot of times we all know Octane crashes. All render engines crash. It happens. Cinema 4D crashes. It's just part of what we do. So I always recommend going into your preferences and in your files, make sure you have, how many times you want to be able to hit Control Z to go back up to like 100. Have your autosave, set it to at least like 10 or 20 minutes. That way it autosaves for you. And then in the memory, also your undo depth, your files is the amount of recent files it's going to save for you. In the memory, you can go up to 1,000 Control Zs, which is always good to have. So I always recommend going to autosave, because you'd be surprised. What's really cool is it'll create a backup. Say it crashes and you have it set to the project directory, it'll create a backup folder. It'll create a backup folder and you'll have a bunch of these. And all you gotta do is right click on it. User is open with, but if you double click on it, it'll give you an option. You can just open it in Cinema 4D, it'll automatically open. So we'll just close that guy. So yeah, so you always want to have autosave enabled, because that's just a lifesaver, especially when you're working on big projects like this. So what we're going to do next is we are going to set up the camera animation. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a null. We're going to drag our camera into the null, go back to the beginning, and then we're going to make a keyframe, go to the end, rotate it 360 degrees. So now we've got another animation going on where it's spinning while it's doing this. And now we're going to add some organic camera shake. And to do this, I'm going to use Grayscale Gorilla Signal, which you can find at GSG or grayscalegorilla.com under tools. And Signal is a really awesome tool for what I do. Doing a lot of loops, doing a lot of tour visuals. It just makes things so much easier for looping animations. And there's so many other... It goes way deeper than just doing like looping animations. It's a great, powerful tool. I recommend picking it up and using it if you're going to do this kind of art. Also, for some of the textures I was using, I didn't want to skip over this. For some of the textures I was using, for more of the surface textures, this guy Marco on Gumroad has these packs. He's got this free one that's pretty decent, and then he's got these other two packs. I think like, I don't know, it costs like $10. Which is totally worth it if you're doing a lot of grungy, dirty kind of stuff. So I recommend picking this up. I'll try and include these links for this tutorial, for Signal, and for this in the video description. So what you want to do is you want to select your camera. If you have Signal installed, you want scripts, user scripts, Signal scripts, presets, and for this I'm going to use the PSR Vibrate. I'm going to get rid of the scale because we're not scaling anything. Now, as you can see, if you just hit play, it's pretty crazy and just makes absolutely no sense. And oh my goodness, why did I do this? Because what you want to do is you want to go into here, into your settings, go into the noise, and drop this down to like 1%. Seriously. Now if we hit play, we got a really cool like organic camera shake. So it's not just, you know, a linear straight. It adds a little bit more to the animation. So now that we basically have this set up, what I want to do is maybe add a little more color to it, if you will. This is looking pretty good. We got a lot of lights. It's lit up pretty well, but it's kind of monochromatic. So let's go into a different view. Let's grab a couple lights. Pull this guy over here. Make it a little bigger. I tend to like using discs because it gives you a little bit of fall off, and it's not quite like a hard edge when you get reflections. Not that it really matters that much. So let's see. Let's go out of our camera here. Yeah, there we go. All right. Let's see, where do we got that set up, the coordinates? Yeah, we'll go 500. Yep. 500. 500. Oh, wait, no. Minus 500. Make a copy of it. Spin that guy around 180. And then for this one, we do 500. All right. For this one, I think we're going to add a RGB spectrum. And we're going to make this one pink. Obviously, you can choose whatever color you want, whatever suits your needs. Same thing in this one. We're going to add an RGB spectrum. And this one, I'm going to make like a lighter blue. Kind of like in the reference that I showed you in the reference video. So now let's go back into our camera and see how that looks. All right. Cool, cool, cool. Maybe let's make these guys a little wider. So let's say, I don't know, see how much that changes. Not too much. But we can also move the coordinates in a bit. So you see, we drag this guy in a little closer. Drag this guy in a little closer. Now we're getting more of the fall off from it. Make sure this isn't on. It's not. We can just go ahead and get rid of that guy. Let's set to that. And then we can go into our render settings. See, we don't even need to be that high now. We can actually come down a bit, so it's not all blown out. And that's actually nice. It looks pretty clear. You got some nice texturing on there. So let's check out some random frames. And what's cool about this is you can grab like any random frame in here and it'd be a really great just still render. I mean, the animation is going to be cool and it'll look great, but you can go through and you can find certain points and you're like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. I actually like that. You can change your camera. You know, you can zoom in or out if you want. But all in all, I mean, that's pretty much the effect. So in this second part of this tutorial, what we went over is we did a little bit of extra modeling, showing that you can use the current model that you have to create more models by selecting pieces of it and then extruding it and creating extra elements for it. We also showed that you can actually just put lights right on your object. So that way you can light your scene with little to no lights because you already have emissive textures. We went over how to create a worn metal texture in a blend material, transferring over from a mix material that, again, I did using Chad's tutorial here and just did it in a blend node or a blend material. And then we set up a cloning on a spline in order to use a particular animation, an offset animation, to create an organic animation. and then we use some Grayscale Gorilla Signal in order to set up the organic camera move. So that is about it. Hopefully this helped you guys out. Hopefully you guys take the modeling part from part 1. Make sure you check that out as well if you hadn't seen it yet. Why don't we just go ahead and show you where you can find that real quick. Here's part 1 right here. I also have a previous tutorial on doing some other modeling and texturing. And also check out the motion design community. We have a Discord where I'm a mod. There's a bunch of people from beginner to expert in there, always answering questions, helping out. You can also check out some other tutorials on their site. And yeah, so any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, anything you'd like to see me try and tackle or cover in a future tutorial, hit me up and let me know. Once again, I'm Damon from CCID GFX, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.